Good morning, everyone. Today, we are going to explore a concept that lies at the heart of modern software development, something called an Integrated Development Environment, or IDE for short. At first, the phrase might sound technical and intimidating, but it is actually very simple when broken down. An IDE is nothing more than a workspace, a command center, that allows programmers to do everything they need in one place rather than jumping between different tools. Our goal today is to really understand what an IDE is, why it matters, and how it can be thought about in ways that even those of us outside of professional programming can appreciate. The definition: an integrated development environment, as the name suggests, integrates a variety of different programming tools into a single environment. Before IDEs, programmers used to work with separate applications, one to write code, another to translate it into machine instructions, and a third to test and debug when errors occurred. It was as if you were constantly moving between three different buildings to get one task done. The IDE solved this problem by bundling all of these pieces together. Now, instead of writing code in one place and running it somewhere else, a programmer can do everything in one environment. This is what makes it so powerful: integration that saves time, reduces mistakes, and lowers the barrier to learning how to code. Be a historical perspective. To appreciate the value of IDEs, it helps to look at how programmers used to work. In the early days of computing, code was often written on paper punch cards. Each line of code corresponded to a physical card, and these were fed into giant machines that processed them. Later, programmers began to use very basic text editors on computers to type their code. But those text editors were not intelligent. They were no different than writing a letter in a typewriter. After writing, programmers had to manually run a compiler, which converted human-readable code into the binary language that machines understand. If the code did not run, they had to go back, look through the text manually, and attempt to identify where the mistake was. As you can imagine, this was slow, painful, and frustrating. By the time software projects grew larger, tens of thousands of lines of code, often written by whole teams of people, the process became nearly impossible to manage with scattered tools. What programmers needed was something like a modern office, where all the desks, filing cabinets, and communication tools are in one place. Out of this need, the Integrated Development Environment was born. It made the act of programming not only more efficient but also more accessible to newcomers. See everyday analogy: the political office. Now let me bring this closer to your own experience as politicians. Think about your office. Imagine for a moment that you had to draft legislation in one building, store constituent records in another, and hold staff meetings in yet another across town. You would spend most of your day traveling from one place to the next instead of actually governing. The reason your office functions is that it integrates everything in one environment: your desk, your aides, your computer, your filing system, and your meeting space. That is exactly what an IDE does for programmers. It is their political office, their one-stop workspace. It provides the tools to write, manage, test, and correct code without forcing them to wander from one program to another. In the same way that an integrated office allows you to focus on serving the public instead of shuffling between buildings, an IDE allows programmers to focus on solving problems instead of juggling software. The core components of an IDE. At this point, it helps to look at what makes up an IDE. The first component is the code editor, which is like a specialized word processor for programming languages. Unlike an ordinary text editor, it recognizes the structure of the programming language and provides helpful visual cues such as color coding, which makes errors easier to spot. The second component is the compiler or interpreter, which is the translator that takes what the programmer has written and turns it into instructions the machine can actually execute. Without this, the code would just be text sitting on a page. A third component is the debugger. Debugging is the process of identifying and fixing mistakes in code, and the debugger provides the magnifying glass to do so. Instead of running an entire program and wondering why it crashed, the debugger allows you to run the code step by step, inspecting variables and conditions as you go. Then there is project and file management. Modern programs are rarely a single file. They may include dozens or hundreds of files, libraries, and dependencies. The IDE organizes all of these neatly, much like a filing cabinet that lets you find documents instantly. Finally, many IDEs include add-ons or extensions that allow you to customize your workspace. You can connect to cloud services, integrate with version control systems like Git, or even add AI-driven coding assistance. IDE versus text editor? A question many beginners ask is, why bother with an IDE when you can simply write code in a basic text editor like Notepad? The answer is that while you can technically write code anywhere, an IDE makes the process practical, reliable, and scalable. Writing in Notepad is like drafting a complex law on sticky notes. Yes, the words may be there, but you will lose track of them, fail to organize them properly, and struggle to work with others. An IDE, in contrast, is like using professional legal drafting software. It not only allows you to type the words but also ensures they are properly formatted, error-checked, and ready for collaboration. Why it matters to you. At this point you might still wonder why, as policymakers, you should care. The answer has several layers. First, having a basic grasp of IDEs gives you credibility when you engage in conversations about digital transformation, AI regulation, or data-driven governance. You are not simply relying on buzzwords, you understand the tools professionals use to build the technology that affects your constituents. Second, as leaders you set the tone for society. Many governments around the world are encouraging digital literacy and coding education in schools. By understanding the fundamentals yourselves, you show that these skills matter not only for students but for leaders too. Finally, the lesson of the IDE is an efficiency lesson. Integration reduces waste. Just as an IDE integrates coding tools, government systems can integrate databases, citizen services, and communication platforms to become more efficient. The principle carries across domains. Real-world examples. Let me give you a few concrete examples. Suppose a city government wants to launch a mobile app where citizens can report potholes. Developers would use an IDE like Android Studio to write and test the app. They would not need to open a dozen separate programs because everything, from writing the code to testing it on virtual smartphones, is contained in one IDE. Another example, a data analyst in the health ministry wants to examine vaccination rates. They might use PyCharm or JupyterLab, IDEs designed for data science, which allow them to combine code with graphs and analysis in one environment. Or consider artificial intelligence research in universities. AI models are complex, and debugging them requires sophisticated tools. IDEs provide the environment where those models are written, tested, and refined before being deployed in society. The first experience. There is something transformative about the first experience of using an IDE. Imagine you open Visual Studio Code, create a file called hello.py, type the simple command print hello, world, and run it. Instantly, the machine replies with the words hello, world. It may seem trivial, but in that moment you realize that your instructions have made the machine respond. For many beginners, that first taste of creation is enough to spark curiosity and confidence. And the IDE makes that possible by guiding you, highlighting mistakes, and making the whole process less intimidating. Summing up. So, what is an IDE? It is an integrated workspace for programmers, a command center that combines writing, running, and fixing code into a single environment. It saves time, reduces mistakes, and makes coding accessible to both professionals and beginners. It embodies the principle of integration, which is as valuable in governance as it is in technology. It serves as the entry point into programming for many people around the world and the silent backbone behind the apps, systems, and services we rely on every day.